Moving on, the Gemara on Shover Chavis. So, picking up from Tana Rabbanan, right? So the Gemara says Tana Rabbanan on Kufman Vav Aleph. All right, so you can't do what? Right, and that's Pashut. Right, we know that already. Now, obviously, what kind of hole we're talking about here? What kind of hole are we talking about?
One-way hole.
What?
One-way hole.
Forget that. Before you get to one way, what kind of hole are we talking about? A nice hole. Because the case in the Mishnah is a jagged hole. In other words, if a guy makes a neck of chadash, it's clearly, it objectifies his das as one of makav patish. Right? There's no chiddush there.
He wants to increase that.
Yeah. Alright, so if you want to make it wider, you're allowed to.
Right.
Ve'yishomrim emosifin. So you have a big problem, right? What's the problem? What's the machlokas? Why is that a problem? What makes more sense? You should be allowed to be mosif. Binyamin says, right? Because if I'm making a hole wider, what am I doing? Making a hole wider. Am I doing anything to in any way? Fine, that's what it'll trace back to. But I'm not doing anything in any way, shape, or form is affecting the actual hole, right? Or is it still a hole? Conceptually, it's still a hole. There's no difference between a hole that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, whatever inches in diameter. It's always defined as a hole. So yeah. Okay, so keep going on the Gemara.
Okay.
Meaning what?
If you reopen an old hole, you can't.
Right. So Rashi says shenistam dechichozer poseach lav keose pesachu. Right? Shari asui ve'omed ustimaso lav klum. So the thing is made when you go ahead and reopen it. Right. The stopper to begin with was what?
Not part of the.
Yeah, it's a stopper. It's not. It doesn't. No, don't think the stopper becomes part of the clay. All right. It's always considered separate to the clay. Okay. Which is also fine. Right. So the first and last cases are pretty obvious. Wait. So what's the machlokas and mosif? And so we don't know. Now the Gemara asks a funny question. The Gemara says what? V'tana kama.
So what's the difference in that?
Delo. Right. Osofi nami kamasak and pischa. What's the question? Rashi. Osofi nami kamasak and pischa. Right. So the Gemara. Now it's amazing. The Gemara is going with the opposite intuition. Because if you ask me intuitively, what's the problem with is there a problem making a hole bigger or not? I would say no. Right? Because what are you doing? Right? You're modifying. It wouldn't even register as a modification. You're just simply taking a hole and just making it bigger, but it's still the same hole. Right? So the Gemara is saying no. The Gemara is saying that that you should treat it. Or if you're telling me that making a new hole is considered usher, right? Because that's like tikkun kli. You're making a pesach, so you should say the same thing by making a hole wider. You understand what the problem there is? Like the Gemara is going. I don't think intuitively you would think that way. Intuitively you would think that making a hole wider is not a problem. Right. The Gemara is saying no. It's saying the opposite. The Gemara is saying that really making a hole wider should be considered just as bad as making a new hole, right? Which is kind of funny. Why should that be the case? Okay, but you can't answer that until you go to the Doraisa. So the Gemara says, Amar Rabba.
Amar Rabba Doraisa.
Right. So any opening, okay, that's not made for what?
Both going in and out.
Both going in and out, bidirectional,
right.
Is not considered a hole, midoraisa. Right? Rabbanan who? So Rabbanan came along. Now, I'm not sure you got this clear when you prepared, okay? Because I told the guys who was preparing with me. You have to understand the logic here. In other words, the Gemara is saying that the Gemara wants to understand. The Gemara is not interested really in going to the Doraisa business here. We are going to take something from that. But the Gemara's interest is not to go into the Doraisa case. The Gemara is saying that if we're going to understand the Machlokas of Mosif, what are we going to have to turn to? Doraisa, right? Because you'd have to see, in order for Mosif to be a problem in the Rabbanan world, it would have to be a problem in the Doraisa world. You understand? That's the Gemara's objective here. We're going to siphon off of that the business of Doraisa Rabbanan. But the Gemara is going to have to look at the paradigm case Doraisa and see, is there a phenomenon in Mosif there or not? If Mosif is not a problem with Doraisa, the Rabbanan could never come along and tell you that Mosif is a problem. Okay? You understand? Just want to get into the logistics of what the Gemara is trying to do. Okay. In other words, the Gemara is taking us into the world of the chicken coop, which is the paradigm d'oraisa case. Why? Because in order to understand this, give me machlokas midarbanan of Mosif and Mosifin, right? It's going to turn to the paradigm d'oraisa and see if it exists in that framework. If it did exist in that framework, then the Rabbanan can copy it into the Rabbanan framework. If it didn't exist in that framework, they couldn't make it up. Meaning that the Rabbanan hole, that making a one-directional hole, is aser, right? There were gozer mishum lul shel tarnagolin, right? But in that gzera, if there was no problem Mosif in the d'oraisa, they would never make a problem Mosif in the Rabbanan. Okay? So whatever svara you came up with should incorporate that idea as well. Is that clear? You understand that? Okay, it's an important point. But the Rabbanans do these kind of things, right? It's like the Rabbanans don't come along and...
That's what they
Well, they are being more machmir here. They're certainly being more machmir because what are they doing? They're saying that rather than your holes be two-directional, even a one-directional hole is a problem. So this is more chamor, right? Unidirectional. Unidirectional. What?
said they can't do that.
No. That they can do. They did. But for some reason, when it comes to Mosif, right? When it comes to Mosif, they want it. It has to exist here. Okay. But this is the Gzera Misham.
Right.
But why couldn't they? Okay, let me rephrase the question. Why couldn't the Rabbanan say? The Rabbanan could have said the following. The Rabbanan could have said, you know what? We want to be very certain that people don't make mistakes in this area, so we're also going to aser and Mosif.
Because Mosif has to bring out some sort of mistake.
Hold on! Don't give me the answer yet. That's what I'm saying. You got to appreciate the question. Why couldn't the Rabbanan say that? But they didn't. The Rabbanan said, oh, we can't say Mosif. We can't. There's two logical possibilities. Okay, either Rabbanan come along and they say, okay, we're gonna tack on Mosif to this Isser. Okay, we're gonna be super machmer, or that's normally how you would go. Or in this case, it's going to mimic Mosif. If Mosif existed here, it can exist here as well, right? But if it didn't exist here as a problem, then it won't exist as a problem here. What you have to answer is why? Why are they so certain of that? Why couldn't it be that they create a problem of Mosif in the Rabbanan? You understand? So what's so unique about the Lul Shel Tarnagolin? It's like the Avid. That's your cue. Cue Yaakov. The Avid.
David. The Ule. Okay.
Avira.
Avila. Fuke.
All right. So when you make a hole in a chicken coop, okay? I'm not getting into. Just remember, when it comes to these things, we're trying to find the Maisa. We're not interested in getting to the guy's brain. What is this Maisa define as? Every time a guy pokes a hole into the chicken coop, Halacha is objectifying his das and saying that action is a hole that is designed both to allow air in and to allow toxins to escape. Hole serves a certain function, and its function is let air in, let toxins out. It's a bidirectional hole. Okay? Bidirectional hole. All right?
Isn't every hole by that?
Isn't every hole bidirectional? Right. That's the obvious question you have to ask. In other words,
my case with the bees. It's not bidirectional.
Okay, let's take a regular case, right? This is not a bidirectional hole, but yet it seems like it's bidirectional.
It has the potential to be bidirectional.
Right. So v'imba lahosif mosif. Okay, right? So vadai. No, so Sophie vadai Q.
Oh, so it's going to go on.
Okay.
Well, so let's do thing.
Why?
Yushin Ryapsa.
What's riksha?
Some sort of Shabbos.
Okay, so
Well,
this is also in terms of Bekias why it's so important that if you only learn Bekias, you'll never understand what this more talking about. So let's say for now there's okay, all right. So the Gemara is saying you never worry about Mosif. Why not? Why? Because the guy's never going to make a hole. Let's assume a
He's only
standard.
going to start with hole size number 2.
Right. So this is the right size hole. Okay. You want your hole to be number 2. Right. If it's a number 2 hole, he's never going to make it to number 3. Why? He's going to let in a sheretz. So people don't do that. Right. But then the Gemara says, but what about the side that holds ein mosifin? Q.
Yushin Ryapsa. Zimnin Delo Tikne Nekra.
Which means what?
He didn't make it right enough to begin with.
Right. So so that's why. So it could happen. That's the case. Now, if you took this literally, what would be the problem taking this literally? And I assume everyone here is sophisticated enough at this point of learning to understand why it would be ridiculous.
Let's go to everyone and ask.
Right. I mean, because you take a poll, find out what people do. Right. But we don't do that. So obviously, the Gemara is telling you conceptually. There's 2 ways you can look at it. So with that said, let's line up the questions. There's 2 basic things to define. 1, What's the deraisa to the rabbanan? Right? Forget Musa for a second. All right? Just understand what's the transition from deraisa to the rabbanan, and number two, what's the machlokas and Mosif? Obviously, you can't say that it can't be based on what a whole is. No, it can't be based on what a whole is, because if it just goes by what a whole is, so I wouldn't even call a whole bidirectional or unidirectional. I would just say it is. Like you don't start applying like directions to holes.
The definition of a hole is that it's open on both ends.
And that's fine. Right, so that's what it is.
It's not true.
So
Are holes that are specific in the
beginning. What was the problem with the first case? You have this convergence where I'm doing an action. We don't know how to define it. Is it defined as makiv patish or makalkel? Right? We don't know. Right? We don't know. Because we don't know what his das is. We're trying to figure out a way to objectify his das. Okay? But the question now you have to ask yourself is, why is it so important that we need to try to figure out what his das is? Because why?
They'll determine clear or not.
Oh, because a shame kli is going to emerge based on how he relates to it. Right? So if that's the case...
Appreciate if you said to like things that I thought I was saying, like good, like that. That's the sugi, what you're saying.
I know what you're saying. That's we didn't say that point before. Then we make it as clear as that. But I'm happy you got that. Yeah.
If he's making a right.
That's right. In other words, the tension's going to emerge in the Rabbanan world. Okay, right. I agree. But I'm going to order the Gemara. The Gemara first presents the Rabbanan, where the tension exists. You're right. And the Deraisa will never exist, because we're never going to say the guy's das is that the Mekachel can emerge. But why? What makes the Rabbanan different? What's the Rabbanan saying about the whole? It's one simple word, one simple idea. What are you doing? If I'm Shover Chavis, okay? Which means what? We know
is one direction access or not?
It is, but what is it showing us about the nature of the whole?
It might not be to make him clean. It might be to just be destroyed.
So what does that show us about the nature of the whole? What are you doing when you do that?
Yeah,
Come on, concise. You're right. We got to make it more concise.
No, exactly, because if you sounds like the previous case you didn't look.
One more time. In the Durabanan world, okay? Only in the Durabanan world can you have this tension of Mekalka versus Makiv Patish. Because we don't know, right? But the reason why the tension can emerge is because we're in the Durabanan world.
You tell me how it could be the other. How it could be Mekalka?
Because I'm breaking, my action is breaking something open. That's Mekalka. It's destructive. But you never say that in the Deraisa. The Deraisa is never Mekalka. This is clearly Gemar Malacha. There's no Havamina there. What?
Requires you to put things back in.
What?
Bidirectional requires you to put things back in.
I'm not saying a guy couldn't make.
It's not that flow. I don't get
Doesn't mean it doesn't mean we lack the means of creating a bidirectional whole. I'm not saying that. There are situations where you can be over this to Deraisa. What I'm saying is in the case of Shover Chavis, as the example of the Rabbanan, Shover Chavis is I'm making a one-directional whole. Because if it was bidirectional, there would never be a Havamina. Right? It's a one-directional whole. Because what am I trying to do?
Mekalka was bidirectional, correct?
Correct. That's impossible.
Because if I did this re-enter.
Why if it's bidirectional? Not just because it's a paradigm. Why?
Because you don't just want the stuff out.
But so far as the whole is concerned, there's the whole as a whole, and there's the way I relate to it. Now, when I relate to it, we use this word all the time. When I relate to it, what am I trying to do with the whole? Remember, this is a problem alone. I'm trying to make the clean to what? Something that is usable, functional. Okay. Now think about it. Now look at the whole. What's the difference between a bidirectional whole versus a unidirectional whole? Insofar as function is concerned.
One could be reused, one cannot be reused.
No.
See, I don't
No,
know.
not one and two. Bidirectional means what? If it's bidirectional,
Fully functional in all aspects.
okay, it's a fully functional whole. So when I make a one-directional whole, what am I doing to its function? Limiting it. That's the issue. There's a tension emerges because I'm doing an action that limits the function of the whole. When I make a one-directional whole, I'm limiting its function, and that's why you can have a tension in a calco or not. But exactly. I'm not allowing when I make a whole, it's bidirectional. So now what I'm saying is that I'm allowing the potential shame kli to emerge into its fullest, because now in my framework it's operating in both directions. All right, because that's how you relate to holes.
Right,
but it's one second. One case is where the mice is clearly defined as bidirectional, and the other case is where the mice is clearly defined as unidirectional. Shover chavis is unidirectional because I want the things that are inside. Right, that's what the guy wants. Right, but when could it become now? In Durbanan world, when it comes to these things, either he wants the stuff from the inside of the kli, or he wants to take the stuff out. Right, Deraisa is where in the very thing itself, it's clear from his action he wants both. See, you understand that's Deraisa. Deraisa is his action is a both action. It's a both action. Here, we don't know. We don't know what his das is by a barrel of wine.
Yeah, we assume he's trying to make him clean.
Well, it depends. If you say in order for it to be over this or abundant, which is one directional. If it's shover chavis where it's jagged,
I'm saying perfect hole.
even by perfect hole, we're going to assume what?
Try to make kli.
You're trying to make a kli.
Right.
Okay? So, but my point though is that what is a...
You should have said
Yeah,
by
correct. All right. So, but the point though is that what's the issue by a one-directional hole? Of course, it's in my framework. It's how we relate to holes. In my framework, I'm limiting its function, right? That's why Durban come along and create Xera. That's why it's not like the Deraisa. Deraisa means I'm creating a hole to function at its full potential, right? And so far as the Kli is concerned. Whereas in the Rabbanan world, the Rabbanan cares only about one thing, as long as it's one directional. But the move to making the Rabbanan is to show that why is it a Rabbanan? Why isn't, because in that case, I'm now making the hole limiting. I'm limiting its function. In Midoraisa, when I make a hole in the thing, I'm not allowing the full Shem Kli to emerge. Exactly. Now this should lead directly to the Machlokas and Mosif. So what are the two possibilities by Mosif? This is easy.
No, 'cause you can't see the border.
There's two ways to look at Mosif. And then you'll see why the Rabbanan has to go back to the Raisa. Go ahead.
You want? Okay. Does the whole...
So that's the machlokas and Mosif is very nice machlokas. The question by Mosif is very simple. So when a guy makes a hole wider, okay, so what's he doing? Well, so there's two possibilities. One possibility is that when you make a hole wider, if the hole wasn't, now you gotta. There's one trick to this. Let me just repeat what you were saying, but then show you why you gotta be a little careful how you present it. Right. So the way you put it is fine. There's two ways you can look at what Mosif is. Either Mosif is actually creating an actual new hole, okay, which is conceptually difficult to imagine, but it's true. If the hole didn't function before as a hole, but it is physically a hole, right? As far as Allah is concerned, it's not a hole. So now I'm actually making. That's what the Gemara says. That's why it compares to the Nekev Chadash. It's like making a new hole, all right? Or do you say no? That once a hole exists, I can't make a new hole. All I can do is modify what it is. Physically speaking, it's a hole. There's in the objective framework, it's a hole. But you got to be careful with one thing, because the side that holds Ein Mosifin, right, would agree even when.
Even when you actually destroy its wholeness, when you make it a 3.
Right. Why? You understand that though?
What?
He's got to be careful.
Change
Right.
actually produces a quality.
Well, why? Because
Because that's the law of
no,
motion.
let's make sure he understands. In other words, like this. In other words, but now you also understand why you should understand at this point why the Rabbanan had to look at the Deraisa. But anyway,
Because Rabbanan is not a hole in itself either way.
hold on. But no, just your question was what?
It's near you said.
Oh, in other words, like this. In other words, if you want to line the machlokas to be, one side's going to hold that Mosif is really. Question is, what is Mosif doing? Is Mosif actually creating a new Shem hole, which means a Shem Kli, right? So beforehand, I had a hole, but it wasn't functioning, like the second case in the Gemara, but it wasn't functioning, right? The air stuff wasn't working, right? So now I got to make it bigger. When I make it bigger, what have I actually done? I've actually produced a Shem Kli. My hole has now made this Kli functional. Beforehand, it wasn't functional. Now it is, right? So that's a new hole. A Nekev Chadash, even though there's a hole already there. Okay? The other side is going to say, no, that once a hole exists, all I'm doing is modifying it. You can't make a new hole on a hole. If you stick in the realm of the physical, it's always a hole. Okay? But one thing you got to be careful of is that to bring this into the Rabbanan world, the Rabbanan is going to say, even if the hole was a functional hole, most of it's a problem. You understand? In the Deraisa is using as the paradigm. Deraisa is saying, even if it was functional, most of it's a problem. Why? Now answer what you were saying.
What do you mean by
You were saying good before.
Yeah, tell
The Sfar is a very nice Sfar, okay? I agree with the Sfar, but you got to make sure that the side that holds, you can be Mosif, you can be Mosif. One hole doesn't matter what the size is. I can always be Mosif. That makes sense, because that's once a hole exists, we don't care about function, it's a hole. But the other side seems to be based on the notion of function, right? Which is saying that going from 1 to 2 is creating a new hole. But you won't say going from 2 to 3 is creating a new hole, and yet that's still usser. Why? But the sheet of the hole is Amosifin, okay? When I go from 3 to 2, or anytime I expand the hole, what is that telling us, meaning the world watching him, about this?
What did you just say?
In other words, if he goes from 2 to 3, right? The trick is looking backwards now. So what does it tell us about 2?
2 wasn't good enough.
2 wasn't good enough, right? 2 in his framework was lacking. That's why he's making it bigger. You understand? He's making it bigger because he's saying my original hole wasn't sufficient. So if the original hole wasn't sufficient, then what does that mean?
That 3 right now is the hole.
Exactly, and therefore it's a new hole. You understand? So it's not objective functionality. It's functionality in my framework. As long as I relate to it as not functioning to what I want to function as, every time I'm Mosif, I'm indicating that hole wasn't good enough.
Really, if you put another hammer into your
Going back to the original Machlokas, question is how do we look at Mosif? Either you look at Mosif as producing a new hole, like a different hole, or do you see the other side saying no, that once a hole exists, it is a hole. So you can never make a new hole. All you can never do is modify an existing hole. Because every time I make the hole bigger, what have I actually done? Nothing. There's nothing registering. It's still a hole. You know what I mean? In relation to the Kli, it's still a hole. Like, I'll give you an example. Like, Abi's right. In other words, most of it is a new category. The question is, can it be subcategorized underneath Nekev Chadash or not?
Is it Nekev Chadash and Nekev Yashin?
Right, exactly. That's what the Gemara says. The Tanakama, right? Why does Tanakama make it different than Nekev Chadash? Why is the Gemara doing that? It's tipping its hand. It's telling you that really most of it should always be considered underneath Nekev Chadash or Nekev Yashin. Okay? All right. A little background by the Gufta, because people make this mistake also, and I know when I give this over in Shabbos, it's going to be even more difficult. By Gufta, the issue by the Gufta is not the barrel. Okay? It's the Gufta, the straw. So we'll use straw. It's much easier. It's a reed, but it's much easier to think of a straw in modern day terms.
The word Gefas?
No, it's from the Megufta. It's the name from the Megufta, isn't it? I don't know. Who cares? What am I? What do you call it? Philologist? You know what that means, yeah.
Yeah, I do.
All right. So anyway, so what's the case here? What we're worried about here? Let's just set up the facts so you can define this for tomorrow. What we're worried about here is we're not worried about the barrel, the holes in the barrel already. Okay. So let's go back to the board. All right. We're worried about this. This thing. Okay. A spout. A straw. Okay. So the question, now this thing is a Kli, okay? So don't get confused. There's this, and there's this. This is the Kli we're talking about. We don't care about the barrel, all right? If you got to get out of the barrel framework and just worried about this, okay?
Worry?
It's, Gufta is on Kufim and Vavam Beis. It's after the two dots. I'm skipping that first case. I defined it, but I want to push ahead with this before Shabbos. Gufta is it's the second word. Gufta, it's the second word in the line after Svivav.
Okay. Gufta. Okay.
Ravasi.
Rav Aser.
I'm sorry, Rav Aser.
Rav Aser v'Shmuel.
Sorry.
Okay.
Now we know what the heck it's talking about, right? So Gemara's going to explain. What do you mean Aser Mutter? Well, how could it stop at either one? What are we talking about? So now the Gemara says.
How in the world would that be the same word as a
What?
How would that?
I don't know. Whatever. Go ahead. No. That's what it means. Not lechachila, like ideally. Okay, it means like there's three cases. Okay,
Cut it first.
there's this,
Okay, so you cut
right?
it.
There's, I can't even draw it. There's this,
This is what W can do next year.
right? And then there's this. Okay. Okay. So this case, okay. So there's two dimensions required for the straw to function properly. Okay, length and diameter. Okay, it has to be a certain length. Okay, let's assume that's the length. We're going to use this as our ideal. Okay, middle case. Okay, length and diameter. The length. I'm not sure why, but that's the halacha. Okay, but diameter. That's one we're going to focus on. Why is diameter obvious?
They're functioning for what?
As a spout.
Because that's a keep
To
out.
allow liquid to get out?
Right, but let's say it was too narrow. The liquid will still come out.
That's that it's function.
Not at the desired rate.
Yeah, and when you spout, what you want is a nice smooth flow.
Okay.
If it doesn't fit the walls, right, what's going to happen? It's not functioning to its capacity because things are leaking out from the side. Okay, so you want the length and the diameter to be perfect. Now, let's say I find
Why
this.
do you need length?
I just said I'm not sure why. It seems like there's an appropriate length for wine barrels. Okay, now let's say I find this. Okay, what's the first thing the guy going to do when he finds this? He's going to cut it. Is that mutter or aser? Aser. He's mitaking kli, because by cutting it, he's now making it into a functioning reed.
Right.
Right? So therefore, it is aser. Right? Okay. So since it's aser, so everyone agrees it's aser. Okay? All right. Yeah.
How's the read function?
So next case is
I'm gonna look like you. That's it. Okay. Where's the next case going?
right after the case where he said aser. It says uman dishar. I'm sorry.
Ahaduri.
Ahaduri. Dechuliyama lo pligi dishare. What's ahaduri? That's this case. I had the perfect fitting reed. Okay, it was perfectly set up for this, and it fell out. Right. So what do? I want to put it back in. That's mutter. Why is it mutter? What we're not concerned about?
Well, please stay the same.
Because
'Cause
you're
he's
not
not-
gonna have to fix it.
Right, he's not going to have to fix the straw. It fits perfectly. Like a cork. I mean, I know the cork's the opposite function, but I'm saying, you're not worried about the cork fitting the bottle. It goes right back in, right? Same thing here. This thing fits perfectly. So you're not worried about him playing around with it. It fits perfectly. So those two cases are obvious. Here comes the middle case.
Okay. Kipui de chaticha v'lo mitzayna.
So let's say it's cut to the right dimension, lengthwise, but it's too narrow.
Right.
Okay?
How do you make something wider?
So assuming the material's pliable, it must be that it's a pliable material. You know what pliable means, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So it's got to be. It's got to be like it had some give. Okay?
That wasn't me.
Right. Uman also goes rinan.
Mechtach l'tachila.
Right.
Mandashari logazrin, like it's 9.
Oh, that's it. Logos rinan. And then it's going to be. It's based on the machlokas shfofaris, but I'm not worried about that. So machlokas is this case. Okay. Once that holds it's shari. Once that holds it's not. Why? The side that holds is mutter. Now you got to understand what's going to happen here. When I stick this thing in, no one's arguing. When I stick this in, I'm going to try to make it into this. Right. The question is, does it register? Is there a xera of modification there or not? That's the question. Okay. You can think about this for tomorrow. This is obviously going to be very similar
Means
to.
that he might come to land.
You said
Correct.
very similar. You mean
No, well, that's no. The xera is not that I'm going to start to widen it. Because if I widen it, what's the next thing I think I can do?
Cut it. Well,
Cut
why
it.
cut it if it's a perfect length?
Because if I can, no, it was like this. If you're going to tell me I can bring it from this point to this point, maybe a guy will think that what can I do?
Cut it in half.
Right. In other words, if I can modify one
Any
dimension,
sort of fitting.
Like a-
right? If I could do tikkun in one dimension, should I be able to do tikkun then in two dimensions?
You maybe you'll come to cut it.
Exactly.
Okay.
So, which is actually a very reasonable position for Rabbanan to take.
So why is this? I thought